Hi, I'm Amelia Parker, 29 years old, living in Portland, Oregon, where I've carved out a life that's mine, far from the weight of my family's expectations. Last month, I flew back to Charleston, South Carolina, for my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. Picture this: a gorgeous seaside restaurant, twinkling chandeliers casting a warm glow over linen-covered tables, the clink of champagne glasses filling the air. Relatives and old friends mingled, their laughter weaving through the soft hum of a jazz band. It was the kind of night that felt like a celebration of love, legacy, and family pride. But then my dad, Stephen, stood up. His voice cut through the chatter like a knife. "We're so proud of our daughter Grace," he said, his chest puffed out, eyes shining. "She's built a thriving fashion business, a real success story. Responsible, driven, everything you'd want in a daughter." He paused, his gaze landing on me, and his tone shifted. Unlike Amelia, who's still figuring things out. The room erupted in laughter. My mom, Nancy, chimed in, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Yeah, Amelia's probably still scraping by, begging us for cash to keep her little dreams afloat." The laughter grew louder, a wave crashing over me. I stood there, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Their words stung, each one a tiny blade slicing into years of buried hurt. My grip tightened around my glass, my knuckles white, the wine trembling inside. Everyone's eyes were on me, some pitying, some amused, all assuming they knew my story. They thought they knew Grace too. The golden child, the perfect daughter. But they had no idea what was coming. I'd been waiting for this moment. Not for revenge, no. I'm not that kind of person. I was waiting for the truth. 5 minutes later, the laughter stopped. The room fell so silent you could hear a fork clatter against a plate. I dropped the bomb, my 6-figure career, my financial independence, and the crumbling house of cards that was Grace's so-called empire, complete with a mountain of debt and secrets she'd buried deep. If you've ever felt misjudged by your own family, like your worth was measured against someone else's spotlight, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. I'm reading every single one. Because let me tell you, that night in Charleston wasn't just a party. It was the night I stopped letting their version of me define who I am. And it all started with a truth they never saw coming. That night in Charleston, standing in that glittering restaurant with my parents' words echoing in my ears, I wasn't just fighting their judgment. I was fighting a lifetime of being invisible in my own family. Let me take you back to where it all began, to the quiet streets of Charleston, South Carolina, where our family looked like a postcard from the outside, but felt like a battlefield within. Growing up, our 2-story house on a shady cul-de-sac was the kind of place neighbours envied. The lawn was always trimmed, the front porch adorned with rocking chairs, and the smell of my mum's low-country shrimp and grits drifted from the kitchen most Sundays. My dad, Stephen, a retired restaurant manager, ran our home like one of his dining rooms. Everything had to be in order, no exceptions. My mum, Nancy, who'd stepped back from her bank job to raise us, kept the family's image polished, from perfectly curated photo albums to hosting backyard barbecues that drew half the neighbourhood. But behind that white picket fence there was a clear favourite: my older sister Grace. From the moment I could ride a bike, Grace was the star of the show. At 32 now, she was 32 then too. Just kidding, I mean she was 3 years older than me. Always ahead, always shining. Her high school awards for poetry and debate were framed and hung in the living room, like some kind of shrine. "Look at your sister," my dad would say, pointing to her trophies as if they were proof of divine favour. "She's going places, Amelia." Grace soaked it up, twirling her hair with a smile, always ready to remind me how she aced her English finals or led her debate team to nationals. Me? I was the kid who loved crafting stories, not with words like Grace, but with images and ideas. I'd spend hours sketching website designs or tinkering with blog layouts on our clunky family computer. I saw patterns in how people clicked, shared and connected online. To me, it was magic, building something that could reach thousands with a single post. But to my parents, it was a waste of time. "And that's a hobby, Amelia," my mum would sigh, tossing my sketches into the recycling bin. "Not a career. My grades were good, solid B+s, sometimes A's, but they never made it to the wall. My little awards from coding camps or design contests? They ended up in a drawer, forgotten." By the time I was 16, picking colleges, Grace was already at 19, strutting into the Savannah College of Art and Design, studying fashion business. My parents threw her a send-off party so big it could have doubled as a wedding. "Grace has a vision," my dad bragged, clinking his sweet tea glass with neighbours. "She's going to take the fashion world by storm." I sat on the porch steps, clutching my acceptance letter to a local community college's digital media programme. I'd spent months researching, dreaming of turning my love for content creation into a career, building strategies that could make brands soar online. When I showed my mum the letter, her laugh was sharp, like a door slamming shut. "Content? What even is that, Amelia? You'll end up jobless, tinkering with computers." My dad was blunter. "Pick something real like your sister." That stung. Not just the words, but the way they said them, like my dreams were a joke. Grace got a new laptop, a car, and a parade of praise for her ambition. Me. I got a lecture about my part-time job at the local bookstore, shelving novels while my parents grilled me about every penny I earned. They'd drive across town to watch Grace's fashion shows at school, but forgot my presentation at the regional tech fair. I'd overhear them whispering in the kitchen. "Amelia's too stubborn," my mum would say, her voice low. "She doesn't get how the world works." But Grace? She could do no wrong. Her fashion dreams were bold. Mine were unrealistic. Family dinners were the worst. Grace would breeze in, talking up her latest internship at a boutique or her big plans for an online clothing store. My parents hung on her every word, nodding like she was delivering a sermon. I'd try to share something, maybe a website I'd built for a school project or a marketing campaign I'd mocked up, and my dad would cut me off. "Let's talk about something that matters," he'd say, turning back to Grace. My mum would give me that tight-lipped smile, patting my hand like she pitied me for even trying. I'd sit there, pushing rice around my plate, my stomach twisting with a resentment I didn't yet have words for. It wasn't just that they loved Grace more, it was that they didn't see me at all. Looking back, I can pinpoint the moment the rift became permanent. I was 17, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a rejection letter from a fancy tech school in California. I couldn't afford it, not without help. I overheard my parents in the living room, talking about college funds. "We'll cover Grace's tuition," my dad said, his voice firm. "She's got real potential," my mum agreed. "Amelia will figure it out. She's independent." That word hit like a slap. Independent, they didn't mean it as a compliment. They meant I was on my own. Grace got a free ride to her dream school, while I was left staring at a future they didn't believe in. That moment lit a fire in me. Not to win their approval. I was done chasing that. I needed to prove to myself that I was enough. So I worked harder. I applied for every scholarship I could find, stacking them like bricks to build my own path. I took extra shifts at the bookstore, staying up late to study marketing trends and coding tutorials. My parents didn't notice. They were too busy bragging about Grace's latest fashion show or her big plans for a startup. But I started keeping my wins to myself: a coding competition prize, a scholarship to a digital media program. Sharing them felt like shouting into a void. And then there was Grace. Even back then, I saw cracks in her perfect image. She'd come home from college, all smiles, tossing her designer bags on the couch, but her stories didn't add up. She'd talk about investors and big deals, but dodge questions when I asked for details. Once I overheard her on the phone, her voice tight, arguing about a payment plan. My parents didn't notice or didn't want to. They kept pouring money into her, calling it an investment in her future. I kept my mouth shut, but I was watching. Something wasn't right, and deep down I knew it. Those moments at the kitchen table, overhearing my parents dismiss my dreams while pouring their faith into Grace, they didn't just hurt, they changed me. They pushed me to forge my own path, not for their approval, but for myself. And as I built my life, I started seeing the cracks in the perfect picture they'd painted of my sister. Let me tell you how I got there, and how I began to unravel the truth. After that rejection letter from the fancy tech school, I knew I couldn't count on my parents. So, at 18, I sat in our Charleston kitchen, clutching an acceptance letter to the University of Oregon's digital media program. I'd chosen it because it was affordable with scholarships, and it fed my passion for content strategy, crafting stories that could make a brand come alive online. I looked across the table at my dad, his eyes glued to his morning paper. "This is my future," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. He didn't even look up. "Content strategy? That's not a real job, Amelia. You'll be broke." My mum, stirring her coffee, chimed in. "Why can't you pick something solid like Grace's fashion degree?" Grace, lounging on the couch with her phone, smirked. "Yeah, sis, stick to the real world." Their words hit like a punch, but I wasn't backing down. I'd had enough of being the invisible one. So I packed my bags and moved to Oregon, funding my way with scholarships and a part-time job at a cozy Portland bookstore. I'd shelve novels by day and study marketing trends by night, balancing spreadsheets with textbooks until my eyes burned. My parents didn't notice the late hours or the hustle. They were too busy wiring money to Grace for her fashion empire or bragging about her latest internship at a trendy boutique. I graduated debt-free at 22, thanks to grit and every scholarship I could scrape together. Portland was buzzing with tech startups, the perfect place for someone like me who saw stories in data and clicks. I landed a job at a digital marketing firm, turning social media campaigns into revenue for small businesses. By 26, I was leading projects, my salary climbing to 6 figures. No loans, no handouts, just my own hustle. I'd built a life I was proud of, in a loft apartment downtown with big windows that caught the Pacific Northwest rain. It was my sanctuary, no trophies on the walls, just quiet pride in what I'd earned. Meanwhile, Grace was the family's golden child, her name dropped in every phone call home. "Your sister's launching her online store," my mom would gush, her voice dripping with pride. "She's got investors, Amelia. Real vision." My dad sent me links to Grace's website, a sleek page plastered with photos of her in designer dresses, posing at fashion events. They never asked about my work, not the campaigns I'd led that boosted a client's sales by 30%, not the conference in Seattle where I spoke to a room full of executives. I'd email them about a promotion, hoping for a flicker of interest. My mum's reply was always short. "That's nice, Amelia. Have you talked to Grace lately?" My dad didn't bother responding. Their silence hurt, but it fueled me. I wasn't proving myself to them anymore. I was doing it for me. But then I started noticing things about Grace that didn't add up. During a rare visit home to Charleston, I saw her pull up in a shiny new Audi, its chrome glinting in the low-country sun. "New car?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She tossed her keys with a grin. "Business is booming." But her smile faltered when I pressed for details. Later that night, I overheard her on the phone, her voice low and tense, arguing about missed payments. My parents didn't seem to notice, or didn't want to. They kept bragging about her empire to anyone who'd listen, while I quietly filed away the red flags. Back in Portland, my life was steady. I led a team crafting national ad campaigns, my strategies driving millions in revenue. A client once flew me to San Francisco for a pitch, calling my work game-changing. I sent my parents a photo from the event, standing in front of a banner with my name. My mom's reply? A single line. "Looks fun. Grace just closed a big deal." It stung, but I was used to it. What I wasn't used to was the growing unease about Grace. Her social media was a parade of lavish dinners, tropical vacations, and designer handbags. Things that screamed money she shouldn't have. I started wondering how she was affording it all. Then came the call that changed everything. I was grabbing coffee with Zoe, my best friend and a freelance journalist with a nose for sniffing out trouble. She leaned across the table, her voice low. "Amelia, you need to hear this." She'd been at a networking event in Atlanta and overheard someone mention Grace's name tied to a failing fashion startup. "They said her company's in deep trouble," Zoe told me, her eyes serious. "Unpaid vendors, angry investors, the works." My stomach twisted, a mix of curiosity and dread bubbling up. Zoe didn't push, just squeezed my hand. "Whatever you find, you've got this." That night I went into research mode, my content strategist brain kicking into overdrive. I started with public records, business filings, court documents, anything I could get my hands on. A few clicks revealed Grace's company, Grace Parker Designs, was a mess. Her online store had glowing reviews, but behind the scenes it was bleeding cash. Court filings showed she owed creditors over $120,000, with liens piling up against her so-called assets. I cross-checked with business registries and found her empire was a shell, propped up by risky loans and empty promises. What hit harder was what I found next. I dug into our family's shared bank account. My parents still used it for emergencies, and I had access from years ago. I saw transfers, big ones, to Grace's name. Thousands of dollars wired from my dad's retirement fund. My mum had started working part-time at a local bank, something she hadn't done in years just to cover bills. They were pouring money into Grace's failing business, and it was sinking them. I confronted my mom over the phone, keeping my voice calm. "Why are you sending Grace so much money?" I asked. She bristled. "She's just expanding, Amelia." "You wouldn't understand." I pressed harder. "How much have you given her?" She dodged. "It's family business. Stay out of it." But I couldn't stay out of it. I kept digging. I found emails between Grace and a lender, where she begged for extensions on payments she couldn't make. Another search turned up a forum where vendors complained about unpaid invoices. One called her a con artist, who promised big but delivered nothing. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. Grace's success was a mirage, built on lies and my parents' blind faith. Zoe's call had sparked my curiosity, but my instincts kept me going. I noticed patterns in Grace's behaviour, how she dodged my questions about her business, how her social media flaunted a lifestyle that screamed overreach. I remembered a family call where she bragged about a new investor, but her voice cracked when my dad asked for specifics. My parents didn't notice, too busy praising her vision. I did. That crack was the first thread I pulled, unravelling the myth they'd built around her. I got angry, not just at Grace but at my parents for enabling her. They'd lecture me about responsibility while funneling cash to a sinking ship. I thought about calling Grace out, but I held back. I needed hard proof, undeniable evidence before I made my move. So I saved everything, screenshots, documents, emails. The 35th anniversary party was coming, and something told me it would be the perfect moment to set the record straight. As I sat in my Portland apartment, staring at the stack of evidence, emails, bank transfers, and vendor complaints, I knew the truth about Grace wasn't just a hunch anymore. It was a ticking bomb, and my parents' 35th anniversary party would be the moment it went off. I wasn't angry, not in the way I used to be. I was focused, ready to show them who I really was, and who Grace wasn't. A month before the party, I got an email from my mum Nancy with a glitzy digital invitation. They were throwing a grand celebration at a seaside restaurant in Charleston, complete with a gourmet menu, a live jazz band, and a guest list packed with relatives, friends, and half the neighbourhood. "We're going all out," she wrote, her words practically sparkling with pride. But I knew something was off. My parents weren't the type to splurge like this, not with their retirement savings shrinking, and my mum picking up shifts at the bank. A knot formed in my stomach as I booked my flight from Portland to Charleston. I needed to see what was really going on. When I arrived at my childhood home, the air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing. My dad was on the phone, his voice sharp, arguing about a payment plan. My mum was flipping through catering menus, muttering about costs but waving off my questions. "It's a special occasion, Amelia," she said, avoiding my eyes. I spotted a stack of bills on the kitchen counter, past due notices from a credit union. Later, I overheard my dad whisper to my mum, "We'll cover Grace's share too." My heart sank. They'd taken out a loan not just for the party, but to bail out Grace again. I checked the family bank account. $6,000 wired to Grace last month, plus a $12,000 loan for the venue. Their savings were nearly drained. I confronted my mom in the living room, keeping my voice even. "Why are you borrowing money for this?" I asked. She brushed me off. "Grace is helping with her connections. She's doing fine," but I knew better. Grace's connections were a front. Her debts were piling up and my parents were sinking with her. I didn't push. They'd only dig in deeper. Instead, I prepared. If they wanted to parade Grace as their pride and joy, I'd show them the truth. I spent nights in my old bedroom, compiling a file, bank statements proving my 6-figure income, tax returns showing no debt, and a dossier on Grace, court filings, emails, and vendor complaints about her unpaid bills. I organised it all into a sleek digital presentation, every number a bullet in my arsenal. The day before I left Portland, I met Zoe for coffee. She was in town covering a tech conference, her notebook stuffed with scribbles. We chatted about her latest article on startup scams, and she said something that stuck with me. "Lots of big talkers crash hard, Amelia." I nodded, thinking of Grace, but kept it to myself. Zoe didn't pry. She knew I was wrestling with family drama, but stayed out of it, sticking to talk about deadlines and editors. Her calm was a lifeline, grounding me for the storm ahead. Back in Charleston, I helped with last-minute party prep, biting my tongue as my parents bragged about Grace's latest deal to anyone who'd listen. At a family barbecue, my dad clapped Grace on the back, telling cousins, "My girl's got a knack for fashion. She's killing it." Grace grinned, but her eyes darted to me like she sensed I was watching. I smiled back, my folder of evidence tucked safely in my suitcase. I wasn't mad anymore, just ready. My parents had spent years dismissing me, propping up Grace's lies. This party wasn't just a celebration. It was their stage to flaunt a fantasy. I'd let them have their moment until it was time for mine. I rehearsed my plan in my head, picturing the restaurant, the clinking glasses, the hum of the crowd, the glow of chandeliers. I'd wait for their praise of Grace to peak, then lay out the facts, my success, her failure, and the lies she'd spun. I didn't want to humiliate them, but I needed them to see the truth not just about Grace but about me. The party was days away, and I was ready to turn their story upside down. The night of the anniversary party arrived, the restaurant alive with elegance. Chandeliers sparkled over tables draped in white linen, the scent of crab cakes and magnolias floating through the air. Guests in suits and dresses mingled, their laughter mixing with the soft strum of a jazz trio. I stood near the bar, my folder of documents in my purse, my heart pounding like a drum. My dad took the stage, his voice booming through the microphone. 35 years of marriage, he said, raising a glass. And we're proudest of our daughter Grace, a real go-getter who's made it big in fashion. The crowd cheered and my mum joined in, her smile wide. Unlike Amelia, she added, her tone sharp, who's still scraping by, probably begging us for cash to keep her little ideas going. Laughter rippled through the room, relatives and friends glancing at me with pity or amusement. I gripped my purse, my nails digging into the leather. Grace stood beside my parents, basking in their praise, her designer dress catching the light. But I caught her glance, a flicker of unease in her eyes. My dad kept going. Grace has built a life of success and responsibility, something we all admire. The applause grew louder, but I'd had enough. I stepped forward, my voice slicing through the noise. Can I say something? The room hushed, all eyes on me. My hands were steady despite the adrenaline rushing through me. I pulled out my phone where I'd loaded my presentation. You've got it wrong, I said, looking at my parents. I'm not begging for anything. I'm a content strategist in Portland, earning 6 figures with 0 debt. I held up my phone, showing bank statements, the numbers clear as day. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Then I turned to Grace. But my sister? She's not what you think. I clicked to the next slide. Court filings, liens, creditor complaints. Grace owes over $120,000 from her failed fashion company. Her online store collapsed, leaving vendors unpaid and investors furious. The room went silent, the air thick with shock. My dad's face paled, his glass trembling. My mum's smile vanished, her eyes darting to Grace. I wasn't done. And that's not all, I said, my voice calm but firm. Grace forged your signatures, yours, Mom, Dad, to take out loans in your name. She used your money, your retirement, to prop up her lies. I showed the emails, one where Grace begged a lender for more time, another where she admitted to using family assets without permission. The crowd leaned in, some gasping, others whispering. My parents froze, their faces a mix of disbelief and shame. Then a voice cut through the silence. Claire, Grace's best friend since college, stepped forward, her face tight with anger. It's true, she said, her voice shaking. I found out last month. Grace used investor money for her vacations, her clothes. She lied to me, to everyone. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Guests stared at Grace, their cheers replaced by stunned silence. A cousin dropped her glass, the clink echoing. My dad tried to speak. Amelia, this isn't the time, he stammered, but I cut him off. It's exactly the time. You've called me a failure for years while propping up her lies. Grace opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. Her face burned red, her charm crumbling under the weight of the truth. I pointed to my phone, the documents undeniable. Public records, bank transfers, her own words in black and white. I didn't raise my voice or gloat. I let the facts speak. My parents, who'd built their pride on Grace's success, now faced a room full of people who saw through the facade. The celebration they'd planned to showcase their perfect family had become their undoing. I closed my presentation, my point made. I didn't need their approval anymore, but I needed them to know who I was and who Grace wasn't. The silence stretched, heavy with the weight of their misjudgment. I walked back to my seat, the crowd parting, their whispers trailing me. My parents stood on stage, exposed, their legacy tarnished. Grace slunk away, avoiding everyone's eyes. The party continued, but the mood had shifted. No one could unhear what I'd said. That night in the Charleston restaurant, as the truth about Grace hung heavy in the air, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't about winning or proving them wrong. It was about claiming my story, my worth in a room that had only ever seen me as less. But what came after changed my family forever, and it taught me a lesson I'll carry for the rest of my life. A week after the party, my mum called me, her voice shaky, a mix of anger and desperation. "Amelia, we're in trouble," she said, her words trembling like the chandelier lights that night. She admitted their savings were gone, drained by loans for Grace's failing business and the lavish celebration they'd thrown to show off their perfect family. "Can you help us out? Just a little?" she asked. I sat in my Portland loft, staring out at the city skyline, the rain streaking down my windows. My resolve hardened. "No," I said, my voice firm but not cruel. "You made your choices." I hung up, and that was the last time we spoke. I blocked their numbers, their emails, their social media. The family I'd once ached to please was now a closed chapter. I didn't hate them. I just couldn't carry their chaos anymore. Grace's downfall came fast and hard. With her lies exposed, creditors swooped in like sharks. Court documents I later found showed her company, Grace Parker Designs, was officially bankrupt, its assets seized to cover over $120,000 in unpaid loans. Her Charleston condo, once a symbol of her success, was foreclosed, leaving her scrambling for a tiny rental. Claire, her best friend who'd spoken up at the party, cut ties completely. I trusted her, Claire told me in a brief call, her voice heavy with betrayal. She used everyone. I listened, offering no comfort. Her pain was real, but so was mine. Grace tried reaching out once, leaving a voicemail that cracked with desperation. "Amelia, I need a loan just to get back on my feet," she said, her usual confidence gone. I deleted it without responding. She'd built her life on lies, designer clothes, fake deals, forged signatures, and I wasn't going to prop her up. Public records showed she'd moved to a small apartment, taking odd jobs to scrape by. The empire she'd flaunted was rubble, and she had no one to blame but herself. My parents faced their own reckoning. The Charleston social circle they'd cherished turned cold. Relatives who'd cheered Grace's boasts at the party now whispered about her fraud. A family friend, once a regular at their barbecues, stopped inviting them over. My dad's fishing buddies started dodging his calls, embarrassed by the spectacle of that night. My mum, who'd prided herself on her spotless reputation, found her book club meetings awkward, members avoiding her gaze. Their image as the perfect low-country couple, so carefully crafted, was now a punchline. They tried reaching out through mutual contacts, but I held firm. No apology could erase years of dismissal. In Portland, I focused on my life. My career as a content strategist soared. I led a campaign for a tech startup that boosted their sales by 25%, earning praise from clients who called my strategies visionary. My team threw a small celebration, and I invited Zoe, who was in town for a journalism conference. We sat in a sleek cafe, sipping overpriced lattes, talking about her latest piece on digital ethics. "You're killing it, Amelia," she said, grinning, her notebook stuffed with notes from the event. I smiled back, grateful for her friendship, relieved she didn't pry into my family drama. Our talk stayed light: work, trends, the buzz of Portland's tech scene, a welcome break from the wreckage I'd left behind. A year after that fateful party, I stood stronger than ever. I'd landed a contract with a national brand, my strategies driving their growth. My loft, with its view of the Willamette River, was a space I'd built without anyone's approval. I surrounded myself with people who saw me, colleagues who valued my work, friends who celebrated my wins. I'd let go of the need to prove myself to my family, a weight that had once anchored me to their expectations. Stephen, Nancy, and Grace were no longer part of my world. I'd chosen peace over their chaos. Looking back, I learned a hard truth. My worth doesn't depend on anyone's validation, not even my family's. For years, I'd craved a nod from my dad, a kind word from my mom, a moment where they'd see me. But their refusal, calling my dreams unrealistic, propping up Grace's lies, taught me to define my own value. I built a life of honesty and hustle, while Grace's deceit cost her everything: her home, her friendships, her pride. My parents' blind faith in her stripped them of their savings and their place in their community. Living a lie, I realized, comes at a cost, one they paid dearly. This journey wasn't just about exposing Grace's fraud. It was about reclaiming my truth. I stopped chasing approval from those who couldn't give it and started living for myself. That choice set me free. I wake up each day knowing my success is mine, earned through late nights, tough calls, and unwavering focus. The scars from my family's rejection are still there, but they don't define me. They're proof of what I overcame, reminders that I don't need permission to shine. To everyone listening, thank you for hearing my story. If you've ever felt unseen by your family, Judged for being yourself, I see you. Your value isn't tied to their opinions. It's in the life you build, the truth you live. Have you had a moment where your family didn't get you? Share it in the comments. Let's talk about it. We're stronger when we lift each other up. I'm Amelia, and I'm free. Not because I won their approval, but because I stopped needing it. Living authentically without masks or pretense is my victory. It's a freedom I wish for you too.